Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Blaze of BlazeCasting, and I'm your host for Fnatic Origins, a chance to take an in-depth look and learn a little bit more about the players on Fnatic Recall's new North American team, previously known as Josh Tabak Dota. Today, I'm joined by the eponym of that team, Tabako. How you doing today, man?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Alright, so to start off with some basic questions, where are you from, how old are you, what do you do outside of Dota 2, that kind of stuff?
Well, I'm 24, originally from Wisconsin. I moved to California last year for a job at Twitch TV. I'm currently employed there as a software engineer.
Very cool, very cool. So, take me through briefly your development as a gamer. Did you start at a young age, or was there like a pinnacle moment, do you remember, that kind of solidified your interest in gaming on a serious level?
I've played games for a very long time, as long as I can remember. For a while it was like card games. I played, maybe the first ever game I played was the Star Wars collectible card game, but I played some like Magic the Gathering, and got into video games when I was in high school, played a lot of Warcraft 3, and then found Dota. I guess I played World of Warcraft before that, and then moved over to Dota.
Gotcha, gotcha. So the first time you played a game of Dota, how'd you feel? Was it just another interesting game in a long list of custom mods, or did it really stand out to you? Oh,
it was super frustrating. I just died over and over again. It didn't seem any fun. But I think a lot of people's first games of Dota goes like that. But I don't know. I saw the draw and got a... I think the first game actually one of my friends took me out for 1v1 mid, and just sort of showed me like how the game went through. So that was a good starting point, even though I died a lot.
Well, yep, pubbing, feeding, that's how everybody starts out, but
yeah.
Moving on. So, did you actually get the chance to participate in any tournaments in Dota 1? What was your first competitive tournament experience like?
Yeah, I played on a few teams, well, maybe like one team with some friends of mine in Dota 1. We were never very serious or very good, but it sort of gave me an introduction to competitive MOBAs. You know, we just played a few amateur tournaments and didn't do very well. Not a lot to tell there.
Okay, okay. Well, in case the viewers don't know, you used to play on SK Gaming's Heroes of Newerth team, which was considered at the time one of the best teams in the game, in America at least. You played alongside individuals like Fog, B-Diz, a number of other players who have now gotten into Dota 2's competitive scene. Now that you're kind of getting your feet wet and jumping back into it, how do you feel stepping back into the pro scene, knowing that you're going to be going up against some old friends and perhaps some old rivals?
Oh, it's good. I'm glad that some of the Heroes of Newerth players are doing well. I remember when that game first came out, there was a lot of talk about how the only people playing that game couldn't make it in Dota, and they were all terrible. But you know, I think, you know, like you said, B-Diz, Fog, some of the other guys on Dignitas are from Han as well. So I think that's promising. You know, a lot of the players on Fnatic, you know, on my team are from Heroes of Newerth as well, not just me. So it's good to see them doing well.
Gotcha, gotcha. Along those lines, just the differences between the games, I mean, how do you feel that transitions over? You had a lot of experience and a lot of time to build up some just pro experience in Heroes of Newerth, and obviously the Heroes of Newerth is founded on the same game, Dota, but there are quite a few differences. How do you feel that transition's over?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of differences, and you have to learn the differences, but it's not that significant, really, especially when you compared with how fast Dota moves, right? Like, I took years off Dota, and I came back, and, you know, all the TP scroll change, you know, you used to make your tower invulnerable, and you used to be able to TP all at the same time. Now they get the staggered TPs, and the tower doesn't go invulnerable. Like, I mean, little changes like that, like, totally change the landscape of the game, and those are always happening in Dota. So I think it's not about going from one game to another. I think you always have to adjust to new patches to, you know, do well in the competitive scene.
Absolutely. It's amazing how those little tweaks just make such a big impact on the little things, but it really does. Now, moving on into kind of how your team got formed, did you know everybody personally when you got going with that, or was it just kind of a contact type scenario there where you got everything together?
More the latter. I met Whitebeard and Rolo in a pub in Dota 2. They, I think they were Dragon Knight and Crystal Maiden, and they were doing pretty well against me in lane. I think I was like a solo Viper bottom against the two of them.
Oh, man.
And, you know, they started all chatting me, and they're like, are you the Tabako from Han? Because they'd recognize my name. And then they actually kill me while I'm mid-typing.
Nice, nice.
And then they get like... And then their reaction is like, oh shit, we probably just pissed off this player that we want to be friends with. What should we do? And they decided to like feed me back a kill after I TP'd back to lane to like make things even.
That's hilarious.
So that was kind of a funny way to meet. But after that, they just invited me to pub with them afterwards, and you know, I liked playing with them, and then eventually found our other two players, Smurf and Derp.
Cool, cool. So how do you feel the team's doing now as far as synergy? I mean, obviously you had just scattered starts all across the board, but once you guys kind of came together, how did it kind of feel cohesion-wise?
Yeah, I think in terms of other teams I've played on, teamwork has been very good, you know, in the early stages. I'd still say we're an early stage team and we have a lot of work to do, but in terms, like, I've been with other teams for 2 or 3 months and our teamwork has not been as good as the teamwork on this team. I think one of the big things I like about this team is no one really rages too much. You know, people are pretty sensible and level-headed for the most part, which has not always been the case in my previous experience.
Sure, sure. Now, although Josh, is it Tabak?
Tabak is correct.
Okay, Josh, Tabak Dota hasn't been around all that long. You guys really seem to coordinate well in high-pressure situations. So, what do you attribute to your early success now, and how do you feel it's going to transition and grow as a team?
I think like a big part of our early success was we really understood the metagame, the previous patch metagame, before like Bat Rider got buffed. I don't remember the exact patch number, maybe 5.6 or something. I think we really had a good handle on that metagame. Like, it was before the international, and we were like picking lineups that people in the international were picking. You know, we had a great handle on that, and I think we picked well and just had good teamwork. I think going forward, we really need to be aware of adjusting to new metagames. We've done more poorly since the patch, but I think, you know, we have a good solid foundation. We just need to, you know, keep playing a lot more.
Yeah, practice will definitely help with that adaptation over time, and I mean, it was a big patch. I mean, the meta shifted quite a bit in my mind, so it's going to be difficult to get a handle on it, but once you do, I'm sure you guys will do pretty well. Now, over the past few months, your team has actually made quite a splash in some high-level tournaments. I mean, you've even knocked out some major pro teams like the Tough Bananas, which is now MYM, the former Virtus Pro and Empire. As competing rosters and the game meta starts to stabilize, how do you feel your team will fare under the Fnatic tag?
You know, I expect us to keep, you know, we need to keep practicing, like I said, but I think we could be a top team. We're not a top team right now. I think that's very clear, but, you know, we just need to keep playing a lot more. We don't have a lot of opportunities to play against good European teams. We sort of practice late night Pacific, which is, you know, going to be difficult to deal with because there's not a lot of other great teams that play at that time. But I think if we, you know, play a lot on the weekends and really focus on, you know, doing what we can to improve, I think, you know, I think we have potential. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it, you know.
Gotcha. Yeah, very important to keep that mindset and look forward with that. So, how do you feel your professional Heroes of Newerth experience transfers over into Dota 2 play? And also, do you guys plan on going to any major LAN events? I mean, how do you think your teammates will hold up under the pressure of like a live performance or something like that?
Well, I'll answer the LAN events thing first. Well, I mean, we've been trying to qualify for some of the LANs. We played in DreamHack qualifiers past couple weekends, which we did not manage to win, but we did decent in. And so, I mean, we clearly are trying to go to LANs. I think, like, the team goal, maybe it's too much of a reach, but I don't necessarily think so. It's to go to TI3. I think that'd be really a pinnacle of, like, our first year as a team. And that, you know, that's obviously a LAN event, so I think everyone's excited about that opportunity. The previous part of the question was about my Heroes of Newerth experience, right?
Yeah, just the pro experience and how that kind of transfers over. I mean, you're not going to choke up on the when it's all on the line there, I'm assuming.
Well, I hope not. It's interesting because I'm the only one on the team with like a lot of previous experience, and you know, that's an interesting dynamic. I think I bring to the team the ability to like sort of stay level-headed when we when things aren't going poorly, because you know, you just have that experience in the past where, you know, sometimes stuff doesn't go well and you have to sort of power through it. But otherwise, you know, I don't think it's a huge asset. Like, I'm not going in there with an ego because I've played more, and I don't think my teammates have contributing less because they don't have professional experience. I think, you know, it's really a team effort.
Okay. So now moving on into your role on the team. You play solo mid, generally speaking, but what's your favorite hero to play, and is that the laning situation you prefer to play him in?
I definitely prefer to play solo mid. That's what I played a lot with in Heroes of Newerth, and it's the lane that I understand the most. I remember when I first came back to Dota 2 after a long absence, I started playing in one of the in-house leagues, C9DL, and like in my first game there, you know, I was with complexity player IX Mike, and you know, someone else was the captain. I picked some heroes, and the whole concept of like suicide lane solo and like tri-lane safe lane, like this is not a meta that I've been very familiar with, and it was sort of hard for me to adjust. But the mid lane, it's pretty much unchanged. Gotta last hit the creeps, lane control. Know when to get runes, know when to play defensively, and they're just like what I'm most familiar with and what I'm ready to play.
Yeah, I mean the 3-1-1 in general is just kind of thrown topsy-turvy from when you compare it to 2-1-2. It's a completely different ball game, but
it is.
Yeah, there's aggression, there's defensive plays. I mean, really, there's tons of different ways to play it and build it. But yeah, like you said, the solo mid has been generally untouched in as far as its dynamic, unless you're looking at like a dual mid situation, maybe a Chaos Knight, Ancient Apparition, or some nonsense.
Yeah.
Things along those lines, but. Obviously, playing solo mid a lot, you already know the benefits of it. For the viewers, it provides faster experience gain. You get your spells a lot of extra power earlier in the game, so you can make an impact in team fights and such. And you have relatively easy access to gank other lanes. So how would you say those points specifically synergize with your playstyle?
Well, like I said earlier, just like what I'm used to playing. I think really great players in Dota can play any role, so I don't think you necessarily have to loop someone into a specific play style. But I like, in lane, I sort of have sometimes when laning with other people, I don't coordinate very well. So there's that benefit, is that I just sort of know what I can do on my own without having to deal with the communication aspect. So that's sort of like almost a weakness and why it fits with my play style, but that's one of the reasons I like it. I just like being sort of in charge of my own destiny too. Like the 1v1 aspect, it's really high skill based. There's always like a little extra thing you could do better. There's always a creep you could have gotten, and it's not like the 1v3 situation where there's pretty much almost nothing to do, or I don't know.
Yeah, I got you. Kind of going back a little bit to the reliance on your teammates type thing. I mean, obviously communication, it's a team game, it's still very important there. Like as far as is your reliance in the laning phase mostly just them teleporting in to support you if like you get like 2 or 3 man dived or something, or does it go along more with that, you coordinating with ganks and trying to shut down certain heroes?
Can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Like, pretty much like if you're going up a Shadow Fiend mid or something like that, obviously he's somebody that you want to bring down early on and effectively, so you're going to be coordinating with that. Are you relying on your teammates for that, or are they kind of communicating it themselves? How does that dynamic flow?
I think it's like early game map movement on our team is definitely a collective effort. There's not one person calling the shots. Like if I think that I see an easy opportunity for someone to come mid and gank, I'll tell someone to like TP mid or smoke out of the jungle if there's a Chen or something. I can make that call. But in terms of ganking other lanes, it just sort of you play it by ear. A lot of time you're trying to find you got to wait for a rune to be able to gank a side lane. So that's sort of you just play it by ear.
Definitely. Now, do you have any advice for lesser experienced players? I mean, we were talking about having a hard time handling things like rune control, lane control, knowing when and where to fight and engage, poking back and forth, that kind of stuff.
Advice for newer players?
Yeah.
What I found, I've actually taught a lot of people at work how to play Dota. People play it after the office here, so I sort of coach them. And one of the big things is just not feeding. That seems sort of obvious, but if you just play a pub game of Dota and you manage to not put yourself in really shitty situations more than the other team, you're going to win. So, there's unnecessary deaths all the time for newer players. If they're 1v2 in a lane or something, they won't sit back. I mean, Dota's like so multifaceted though. There's not just one piece of advice. Like in terms of being better at solo mid, there's lane control. There's like you get a creep block at the beginning to keep the wave up on your tower. That's like often overlooked at the lower levels. But then there's like the whole dynamic. A lot of people won't be able to harass the opponent and manage to keep up their last hitting. I mean, even I need to get better at that. It's like you can focus on one, you can focus on the other, but it's hard to like do both concurrently. You need to know when you can right-click the opponent hero, but still do it in time to not miss a last hit on creeps. I guess one of the things I see new players who play mid do to make a mistake often is just go to every rune no matter what, when oftentimes they miss like a wave and a half of experience because their opponent was better at pushing the wave before the rune was about to spawn. that you know, it seems like, oh, you're mid, you need to get all the runes, but you got to be careful to like not miss out on a lot of experience and go at the right time. Or if there's like supports missing from the tri lane and they're going to be near the rune, you can't just like go run into your death because there's like a bunch of heroes missing. You just got to be aware of stuff like that.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you with that, and just like, I mean, you covered a lot of points that I was going to ask about. I mean, blocking the wave, I watched a Warcraft 3 video a long time ago from Dendy, who was saying, like, that's the most important thing in the middle lane, is starting that off. It kind of controls all the positioning and the whole dynamic there.
Oh yeah.
Do you agree with that sentiment, or is there something you feel is even more important to worry about?
Oh yeah, it's huge. Like, one of the things I did when I started deciding that I wanted to get back into competitive MOBAs and play Dota 2 competitively, I started playing with this team, and we were only a couple weeks into practice, and I was losing mid a lot. And one of the things I did is I went back and watched that Dendy video that you probably mentioned. That he has like an hour-long video about like how to play mid. And you know, even though a lot of that stuff was internalized, hearing someone say it out loud and like picking up a couple of points that you didn't hear before is like super useful. But also, what I did after those 2 weeks is I spent 30 minutes just practicing my creep block mid because it's something easy to practice on my own, and it made a huge difference. Instead of the wave starting on my opponent's hill every game, like it was now even or on my hill. And I mean, still, I could probably practice that 30 minutes a week, and it'd still probably help on my game a lot. I haven't done it in a while, but I probably should. Sure. It's just such a huge advantage. You know, you don't have the 25% uphill miss chance. You get it's the other opponent has to be vulnerable to like level 1 ganks if there's an invis rune. It just like it generates an advantage. And you know, Dota is a snowball game. You know, you get an advantage and it leads itself to a bigger advantage, and that's even more so in mid. You know, you get a little lane advantage and your opponent has to stay by their tower, and it just, you know, it's huge. So yeah, I do agree that the creep block is a huge part of it.
Definitely, definitely. So I mean, with that lane control, you kind of branch out to, like you said, snowball, and take over not only team fights and ganks, but just control the map in general. I mean, the middle lane with as much access as it has. I mean, you're talking about pretty much the first easiest tower I would say to push. Would you say it's the safe lane or the middle lane?
In the current meta game, it's probably the safe lane because you often have 3 heroes down there, and if there's only 1 person against them, you know, it's often the easiest. I mean, it depends on your hero though. If you're a Shadow Fiend against someone that can't bring down creep waves, you know, it's very easy to like double nuke at level 7, the creep wave, push it in, get a rune, and then either that mid hero that you're up against is stuck mid the entire game, and you can like go make impact in other games, or you're able to take that tower if they leave. So it just sort of depends how the lanes work out. But yeah, it's probably one of the 2 easiest towers to push.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right. One thing I want to hit on real quick is with the changes in patch 6.75, particularly enhancing the bounty of kills and assists, as well as increasing the duration of glyph, it seems like gank-based and hero kill-based team compositions seem to be the natural meta transition. So do you feel this makes heroes that lack early game escape mechanisms less reliable picks in high-stake games, i.e. like Invoker and things like that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you see more of this. You see more early aggression, like CK is really powerful now. And, well, Invoker's less picked, but I think that's more because of his base damage nerf. But even a hero like Syllabear, which is normally fairly weak in the first 12 minutes, but pretty good afterwards, is picked less than he was before. Like, in the previous metagame, it was him and Morphling as, like, the top carry picks, like, in the first 3 picks almost every game. And now, I mean, you'll see him occasionally, the Syllabear, but, sorry, Lone Druid. But you won't see him nearly as much, because he's vulnerable. Like, he doesn't keep his tower alive. He doesn't, he's easy to gank. He doesn't get hero kills. He can't gank. He's like the worst ganking hero in the game. So yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment.
Okay. Do you prefer the meta kind of go in that direction, and more active, more back and forth, you have to escape or you will die kind of things, when you can play aggressively?
Yeah, I think it's more interesting in general and probably makes for a better game. I mean, I mentioned earlier that I think we have not done a good job of adjusting that meta game. So in that regard, I sort of like the old one. But the old one with the Morphling every game was getting kind of boring. So I'm glad there's a change. We just gotta practice more and get used to it.
So one thing I'll mention is back in Heroes of Newerth, some would say that you actually played a little bit too aggressively in solo mid or whatever you ended up playing. But with the more payoff with golden assist or whatever for the successful man ups, as long as you get out of there alive and actually net some kills, do you think that's a strong trait to have, to play very, very aggressively, or do you still kind of have to keep that in check?
I definitely have to keep it in check. I mean, oftentimes if I don't think about it or I'm playing a pub half seriously, I'll often just like be aggressive to the point of like it's almost game throwing. It's it can get bad. And in general, I think it's a fun trait. I think it like makes games interesting, and like I think people liked watching me partly because of that. But I'd say it's a negative trait overall. Like the players when I see players who I respect, it's the players who play extremely low variance Dota, who don't put themselves in situations where they're going to die unnecessarily. They put themselves in situations where it's going to be an easy win of a fight or a fight that they can like get out safely. It's not going to be like situations where they're going to like live with 1 HP and be a hero or like throw the game. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's winning strategy in general. So I do have to keep it in check because it's I like playing aggressive. It's pumps the adrenaline, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Completely hear you on that. It's kind of my favorite playstyle too. But you kind of have to, you know, you're living life on the edge, so you have to be able to draw the line and say, okay, this is going to be going too far. So kind of having that judgment call at split second, along with we already kind of highlighted on communication and interaction with your teammates. Are there any other key traits that someone really needs if they want to break into the pro scene, specifically for Dota 2?
I mean, you gotta be willing to lose, and you gotta be willing to network and like find a team. That's like a big part of it. Is stable rosters have been historically a huge problem in North American Dota. There's ego problems. People don't think their teammates are good enough, and they disband. I think you gotta sort of learn to play with people and just grow as a team. I think that's a very underrated skill, actually. Keeping morale high. You know, that's not an easy thing to do when you're like losing, but it's really important if you're going to get better. The Chinese are very good at that. You know, they lose, they just figure out what they did wrong and get better at it.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's one thing that Valve has shown they really appreciate is a stable roster, but every team's going to have their up and downs. You just kind of have to work through it and improve and move on from it, so that's definitely really important there. So where do you think, you know, Fnatic, Raid Call, the North American branch at least, is going to go from here? I mean, are you the next Dendy Slayer? Are we looking at 2013 International, or what?
Like I said earlier, I'd love to be a part of the 2013 International. Whether or not that's a viable goal, I don't know. We're just going to have to try to not set too high of expectations or too low of I don't know. I just like sort of going with the flow, practicing, trying to do well, signing up for tournaments. I don't think spending too much time figuring out like exactly how good we're going to be or how good we are right now is necessarily very valuable.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, just kind of focus in the moment and try to improve, try to practice up, and that's really what's important to move forward there. So
yeah.
Well, now of course this game is still in beta. A lot of things are still changing around, and I'm sure you'll agree that Valve has done an amazing job with this game. But if you could change one thing, just add in one little feature or anything like that, what would it be for Dota 2?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Valve has done a very good job. They're a great company. I'm glad they were the ones to pick up the reins with Dota. My biggest personal complaint is that there's no rating system in public matchmaking. I don't know. Maybe it's not even good for the game, but I just really like it being there. It's sort of interesting. I like looking at statistics. Heroes of Newerth had like very robust statistics that you could like search online, but yeah, I'm not. It's not really an ego thing either. I'm just interested in it, and I'm kind of upset that it's like all hidden.
Yeah, along those lines. I mean, Heroes of Newerth had like every single statistic. I mean, you had kills, deaths, assists, average, or ratios, or whatever. I mean, they had every little bit. Do you feel that that's kind of providing too much information that you don't need to track and worry about every single little thing? And kind of there were a bunch of what we call them stat patters that just focused on making sure those statistics were high so that they look like good players even if they weren't playing as a team.
Yeah.
Do you feel Valve needs to implement like a bunch of statistics, or maybe just a percentile with respect to how you are by comparison?
Yeah, I mean, I could do with like just a simple statistic that helps you gather like how good are the players you're playing against, like if you're improving. I think that'd be the best outcome for Valve to implement something that did that, and I don't think that's easy to implement. Mm-hmm. Like you said, Heroes of Newerth did have a serious problem with like stat padding people in pubs, and like I said when I said that I'd like ratings in the game, is that I'm not convinced it's actually a good thing for the game. But it is something that like I personally desire. And I think Valve is a good company. They're a smart company. I think if they find a way to do it right, they'll do it. And if they can't find a way to do it correctly, you know, they're just not going to do it. And you know, hopefully they do.
Gotcha. Well, that's definitely what we're looking at. And anyways, just to kind of wrap this up a little bit, is there anything you want to say specifically to the viewers, former fans, any future ones, any shoutouts?
No, just, tune in and watch our games. Having a good fan base is actually pretty important now to getting invited to tournaments. So, I hope you enjoy watching things like this, and follow me on Twitter. Do you have my Twitter up there on the overlay?
Yep, it is on the overlay there. So the his Twitter, that's at Tabako Dota, and I'm at BlazeCasting for my Twitter. Do you have any other media? You stream, I believe.
Yes, just the own Fnatic stream is where I'll stream. I don't have the direct link to that, but you can find it.
That's cool.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's it for the media stuff.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for doing this interview, and I know you have like the Thor qualifier and Join Dota's ATOD tournament coming up, so best of luck to you in those, and any other...
ATOD, you might want to explain that to viewers. That's the reverse draft tournament, right?
Yeah, it's not really 100% serious, but they did add a prize pool to it, so definitely want to do your best at it, but pretty much ATOD, reverse draft, you pick your enemy's teams, so you pretty much pick the worst possible lineup, all carries, or, I don't know, all of the squishiest heroes, whatever you want to do, and just kind of go based on that. So that'll be very, very interesting.
So that should be a fun break, and I think we're playing against some good teams in that. So hopefully, hopefully that goes well. But thanks for inviting me on to the show.
Okay. Well, if anybody didn't catch it, this is Tabako, one of the members of Fnatic Raycall's new North American team. I am Blaze of BlazeCasting, and thanks for watching.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.